Hi, and welcome to The Grief Between Us. I'm Patti Merrill, chaplain and founder of The Waiting Place, a nonprofit grief center dedicated to creating space for honest conversations about loss, love, and the complicated journey of healing. I'm really grateful you're here. Whether you're grieving yourself, supporting someone you love, or simply wanting to better understand the human experience of loss, this podcast is a place where grief can be spoken about openly and listened to with compassion. So wherever you are today, thank you for joining me. Let's begin. Thank you so much for joining us. I can't believe this is the second to the last episode of season 1. How did we get here? It's been such an amazing journey. And so today, my guest is Mariah. And for all the other episodes, I've kind of introduced my guest and kind of shared how we met or things like that. And I'm going to flip this one upside down and change it up. And I'm going to ask Mariah to talk a little bit about how we met and how it is that she is here today, sitting in the room with me, recording this podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so now I'm taking over. The way that I met Patti, some of you who are listening will probably have already heard the longer version of this story, which is great. Maybe we'll release that somewhere sometime. But the way that I met Patti is because I became best friends with her daughter, Mallory, and just ended up coming over to the house one day. And that was not something that Patti was prepared for guests over, because there was some crazy stuff in the background going on.
I wasn't home when you guys first got there, right?
Yeah. You came home.
I came home to this
additional children in your home,
which was not unusual in my household,
and it just was overwhelming and too much. And you reacted in a very aggressive way, and it was really scary for me. And I thought, okay, well, I'm not ever gonna go back to this house again, and me and Mallory are not gonna be able to be really close friends, and that's okay because it's all new. But after some time and getting to know Mallory really well and becoming even closer than ever with her, I finally gave in and came back over and found a completely different mom waiting for me. And it just became customary for me to be over at their house more often than anywhere else. And I just kind of became part of the family.
I'm so grateful you gave me a second.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think when you shared that story with me, I don't know, a few years ago, whenever that was.
It was on my podcast.
Yeah.
When I shared that story.
I didn't remember that I had done that. And I was so embarrassed.
Yeah. And I felt bad to make you feel that way, because it to me is hilarious. It's such a funny story because it just is so directly opposite of the type of person that you consistently have been in my life. And so to think of that first impression where I had no idea who you were, how you normally acted, and I just made this image of you that I decided to let go of to give a second chance, and found that that image was something I made up in my head.
It's so fascinating to me. So what's got you here now? How did we go from that to this?
Yeah.
Oh, you are not just, Mariah in my life.
Yeah.
You are executive assistant for The Waiting Place. You're my right hand in getting things done. You did the website. You helped me with this podcast. You're my executive producer. And I have the privilege of, when I introduce you, to say you're my daughter.
Yeah. I feel like the transition of being just Mallory's friend to being actually a part of the family was one that kind of took a long time for the transition to really sink in. I mean, before I graduated high school, I was calling you and dad, mom and dad. It wasn't until I moved here to Utah and was here in everyday life again that it became like a full transition.
Because we have other friends of my children who call us mom and dad,
Yeah,
but this is different.
this is different. Yeah.
You live in my home. Your place is across the hall
Yeah.
from my place.
Yes.
So grateful for that.
I think that a lot of what has made it become this really close relationship too has been the hard times. Like when I have gone through the hardest thing in my life, cancer and a terrible breakup, I have resorted to coming here. This has been home. And to be able to come here to Utah and be with you guys and be taken care of by you and all of that, it's 100% just an affirmation of this being home.
Grateful you've been able to find that. And, I think one thing that's been fascinating, I don't want to spend too much time on this introduction because I want to get to the meat of
Yeah.
what we've talked about. But, there are still times, right, when my humanity shines bright or maybe goes real dark. I don't know which way to put it. But, especially over the last year or so, as things have become kind of emotionally hard for me and overwhelming. Back then it was a day.
Yeah.
And now I'm like living in the middle of just trying to navigate so much. And we've had some experiences in the last year where maybe I kind of reverted back to that first Patti that you met on that day. Hopefully not quite that.
No, not
Okay.
well, and it like context is everything too.
Yeah.
I had no idea what was going on with you. I thought that was just base level Patti.
Yeah.
And this past year has been a really difficult year. And I know the context of that. And well, part of the context of that.
I mean, for all of us, it's been
Yeah.
a hard year for the whole thing.
Yeah. And I'm also not a 15-year-old teenager who's going through the hardest time of her life. It's been a lot of growth for me to recognize what makes me run away from situations, to recognize like the safety in a relationship supersedes any trigger that I might have from dispute.
And hopefully I've learned a lot in the last 14, 15 years. And I'm learning how to recognize like, oh, shoot, I just did something that was maybe less than compassionate and thoughtful about you and your situation, but I'm able to come back and repair. And to your credit, Mariah, you allow that repair.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, you could easily be like, whoop, nope, not, but you allow the apology to land and allow for the relationship to continue and repair. And that, I think that process in a relationship, whether it's parent-child or friendships or marriages, that's how you strengthen those relationships.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like my compassion for other people has always been really strong, but I would say in the last maybe 5 years or so, it's been something that I've specifically nurtured and paid attention to because I have had a really, really hard life, a really difficult life, and through that, there's people or situations that I have unmeaningly, unknowingly blamed for that situation and just let that be what it is. And going through something like cancer where you're kind of reevaluating the life that you've lived so far, it forced me to recognize and think, you know what? I have no idea what that person was going through at that time. Or I have no idea what they were thinking at the time or anything like that. And that gives me the ability to forgive, not forget,
Sure.
but to forgive and really come at it from a different perspective.
Yeah.
That
To
has
allow
saved me.
to allow a paradigm shift, basically. There's a story from Stephen Covey that I love about he's on a subway. This man gets on with his kids, and the kids are just going crazy, bouncing off the walls, and the other passengers of the train are kind of starting to get irritated. And Stephen Covey decides to say something to the man. He says, "Hey, the kids are kind of going crazy and disturbing people." And the man says, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. We just came from the hospital. Mom just died. And I guess they don't know what to do with it, and I don't either."
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, everybody's paradigm changed.
Yeah.
And instead of being irritated with this man and his kids, they have so much compassion. And that's what's happened for you, is that you've been able to allow yourself to have your paradigm changed a little bit, to the point that it sounds like you can often not even need to know the underlying situation that's going on, but that you can lead with that compassion,
Yeah.
which is beautiful and unique.
And I mean, I definitely, just like anybody else, have my human moment of like just being out of my mind, upset and irritated about a situation or at someone. And the thing that I've learned that has helped a lot is, instead of holding it deep inside of myself and letting it fester and become more, I talk about it with someone. And in the talking about it, I recognize how I'm speaking. And I'm like, you know what? Maybe I don't have the full picture. Maybe I don't have the full story. Maybe I can take a minute, take a breath, and reevaluate the situation.
It's beautiful. The book I read, and I think we've talked about it before, is What Happened to You. To just give people the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
Maybe they're not being a jerk. Maybe something happened to them in their history that was making them so they show up this way.
Yeah.
Let's talk about history for a minute. Let's actually, before we talk about history of you and your life, where you are right now, you're coming up on a milestone birthday.
Yeah. 30, you
Yeah.
guys.
And I think what's so significant, I mean, 30 is significant for anybody. But what makes it so significant is, for a long time, you didn't think you'd make it to 30.
Absolutely not. I would say probably since I was maybe 16, I've not ever thought I would make it past 25, maybe. Like,
And just like, what was going on, but that was your reality.
yeah. So I have lupus, and I have a pretty aggressive form of lupus, and it is an autoimmune disease. So it's not something you can look at me and know that I have, but it does take its toll on me consistently. And I remember when I was diagnosed, it was something that, the doctor had said was going to be the reason that I die. And he was not very hopeful. And so I just took that and ran with it and thought, you know what, then I'm just going to do whatever I want because there's no repercussions. And it caused me to not do so well with school and not really make a plan for myself past 25, And I just was living life as best as I could figure out how to. And just every single time that a major health issue came up, I've been in the hospital. I've had lots of different procedures and surgeries. And every time I would go into the hospital, I'd be like, okay, this is it. This is the moment. I've said what I wanted to say to people. And I go in and I wake up and go, that wasn't it, I guess. Okay, great.
And in those types of moments, like, what feelings were there? Like, you wake up and you're like, wow, okay, this wasn't it.
It was definitely really hard. It was consistently, at first it was kind of like a happy thing, like, okay, great, I'll have a little bit more time. And it eventually got to this really dark place of kind of waking back up and going, great. Like, it wasn't necessarily me being ungrateful for my life, but it was kind of being like, okay, well, how much longer do I have until the next crisis? Like, it was a very negative point of view. And I think it was when I went through cancer and started really digging deep into more about myself and more about my life, and did the Mariah Effect, the podcast, in talking about all that stuff, that made me recognize and realize how little care I had for myself through all of that. And trying to build those pieces back together of caring and loving myself enough to be excited when I made it through something, and excited when my birthday came around.
So it makes me curious, like, your early life combined with this health journey, there's just a lot of instability in your life. And I just would invite you to share whatever you feel comfortable sharing about that, because I think it makes a lot of sense that you would feel this way. Some people might be like, what? Like, you wake up and you think you're going to die, and you wake up and you're alive. Like, how can you not be excited about that? How can there be a negative aspect to that?
Yeah.
And I think, again, this idea of what happened to you earlier in your life that could have contributed to that narrative for you.
Yeah. I love my family very much, and I'm so grateful to them to go through what they were all going through, to be able to still continue to make sure that I was okay. But there were a lot of things that can cause a lot of trauma for somebody so young. And there's just a lot of things, the ways that I react to certain things in my life now that are still connected to that. I found out reading this book, it was a book about trauma. I think it's like How the Body Works or something like that. And in that book, it said such a simple line where it was like, people who have problems with their body, like having instability when they walk or something, can be traced back to trauma. I have been clumsy probably since I was in high school, and a lot of the trauma, like the traumatic things that happened for me, were in that like middle school to high school age. And so I'm like, wow, I'm not just a clumsy person. I actually have this thing that has plagued me because of trauma.
Yeah.
And it just opened my eyes and made me realize, like, so much more empathetic to myself.
Yeah, I love that.
About everything.
I think the book is called The Body Keeps the Score.
The Body Keeps the Score. Yes, that's what it is.
So surviving, maybe not thriving for a long time. What did that require of you to survive through it all?
Yeah. I have mentioned before, but I'm a very compassionate person. I'm very empathetic. People's emotions around me affect me heavily. And a lot of my early 20s was me forcing myself to be numb to things.
Because being that empathic, I can't even imagine, to go through that much trauma and dysfunction, all of that. I'm not finding the right words that I want, but like on your nervous system specifically, being so sensitive, it could destroy you.
And it very well could have. I mean, there were a lot of things that I did in high school and right after high school that were very self-destructing kind of things. I mean, I was lying all the time about where I was. I was, talking to people that I shouldn't have been talking to. There was a lot of things that I was doing because I didn't want to feel what was happening around me. And there were a lot of ways that I would try to escape. And some of them were more healthy, of like hanging out with Mallory or being around my friends or focusing on school. And other times it was something that was just like, I can't believe that I made it out of that alive kind of things. And I am so grateful that I did now, looking back on it, of course. But at the same time, I spent a long time being upset with myself for that and thinking, how could I have done something like that? Am I an idiot? Like, those type of negative self-talk. And it took a long time for me to recognize, like, I was doing the best I could with what I had.
And now have that self-compassion. The compassion for other people, someone else in the same situation as you would have all kinds of compassionate,
Absolutely
supportive things to say. But then to turn it on yourself is so much harder.
Yeah. And we played a game. I can't remember when this was, but we played, because we play games with the family all the time. We played this game and it was like a question game. And one of the questions was like, where everybody has to answer the question about one person. And it was like, what is this person's strength and what are their weaknesses? And one of the people at the table said that my strength was how much I care for other people and how much empathy I have for other people, but it's also my weakness because I care so much that it destroys me, or I care so much about somebody else, but I refuse to give it to myself.
Yeah, I think we often find in this idea, like our greatest strengths can easily get tipped over to be our greatest weakness.
Mhm.
But the opposite is also true. When we recognize what our weaknesses are, those can, with work and intention, become our greatest strengths as well.
Yeah.
So whether it was, back when you're in high school or more recently when you came and lived with us in Utah, what did that mean to you to be able to find safety, emotional safety outside of your birth family?
It kind of like it gave me a way to relax. I feel like a lot of my life has been I've been on edge waiting for the other shoe to drop because that's what would happen. I'd have this moment of just the brightest light of a moment, so much joy, so much happiness that would immediately be followed up by one of the worst moments of my life because it just was this unstable environment of never knowing when things would switch, when things would change based off of other people's emotions. And being able to be with a family or be with people that didn't switch like that quite as often, and definitely also had the clarity to be able to come back and apologize for it afterwards too, and recognize, meant that I didn't have to be on edge. I didn't have to be prepared for when a shoe would drop. I could just relax. I could be myself fully and be able to talk about things that I cared about without worrying about what the person would say about it or how they feel about it. I could just be open about whatever I was feeling. And it is so crazy because I feel like, especially when I first met you guys were very, very religious. And I was not. I still am not very religious. You still are. But the difference is that I got to know you so much better and got to understand how accepting you are, very specifically, in how we all come through life, you know?
I mean, I think there's been a lot of growth and like growing up, maturing over the years for both of us. I will quickly and easily admit that I'm a recovering black and white thinker and learning to step outside of that and really embrace my heritage a little bit more, having been, growing up as the product of a Buddhist mother and a Christian father. I was raised, I wasn't raised in a home that had black and white thinking quite the same way. There's a caveat there. I mean, my mom was Japanese, and so there was a lot of expectations. My dad was a military man, a lot of expectations. But
Yeah.
around religion, there wasn't a lot of that, So I appreciate your patience with me as I've learned to step away from some cultural ideas regarding that and learn to embrace a more compassionate mindset.
Yeah.
So, you talk about coming into the home and interacting more and being able to be yourself more. And that, one of the questions that I wanted to ask you was how did being welcomed into our family and it's not like I'm not trying to be like, yeah, we're all that. We're such a great family, right? But so maybe just being welcomed into a space where you could feel more safety, you could feel more relaxed. How did that change your sense of yourself, like your sense of self and who you are in this world, what you have to offer, your value?
Yeah.
Maybe it didn't, but I think it did.
I think it did too. I will say that I think a lot of it also had to do with like the time of my life that I was into. Met you when I was a teenager. I've gone through my 20s knowing you, being a part of the family. And I think that being able to figure out who I am outside of the traumatic things that I've been through has been a journey and a process that I've had to try and navigate and figure out. And I've never felt safe to take that time to figure that out. And being able to be with you gave me the ability to feel safe in like, if I am one way one day and trying to find myself, and a different way another day, it's not going to come with like a million questions. It's just going to be acceptance of what is happening and give me the chance to navigate that. And I feel like being a part of a family that was very loud and aggressive made me shrink inside myself a little bit. And being in your family that's very loud,
Yeah.
and, and maybe not so aggressive made it to where I felt like, wow, I can be loud. I can laugh as like my full laugh. I can be silly and nobody's going to shush me. Nobody's going to, make me feel any type of way or ridiculous for feeling the way I feel. And even when I do get like made fun of a little bit sometimes by one person in particular, it always comes with this feeling of like they're doing it because they care about me and they love me. And it's just for fun. It's not a serious dash to my character,
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And I don't know, holding so much space for our own imperfections as the male family, and giving us that dose. So joy in your life then and now. Do you feel like you had joy in your life when you were younger?
I think I did. I think there's moments that I can remember that make it to where it's difficult to have just this rigid line of how I feel about people in my family or people from my past, because people are so gray. Like they're not black and white. They're not one thing or another. There's complexity there. And there's people in my family that I have had like so much love and fun. And there's moments that I remember of going over to my grandma's house and just being able to be around everyone and feeling happy to be around everybody. I used to love my aunt and uncle. I used to love my Angie more than anything when I was a kid. And being able to hang out and be around them and be one of the adults because I was a little older always made me happy in the moment. And it wasn't until I got older and looked back at some of the things that were going on in the background or some of the ways that I was kind of placated in a way, like it made me recognize those moments of being like, I was happy in that moment as a kid, and it's okay to leave it be that. But I can also recognize that it wasn't perfect. It wasn't that way for everybody in that.
Yeah. Oh, joy now. Right. How does it differ, or how is it the same? Or how, like, joy then, joy now? Where are the two from?
Yeah. I feel like joy then was this precious item that I had to wait to be able to receive. And like when I did get it, I would hold it so close to myself and relish that I had it, but I was always waiting for it to be taken away again. And now I feel like joy is I would say that I have days where I'm more happy than any other emotion. And it's just this base happiness that comes from being able to be around people that I feel like I could be myself with and be doing things that I want to do with my time. If I want to sit in my room and read all day, nobody's going to begrudge me for reading all day.
Right.
If I want to be out in the living room watching TV, everybody's going to do their own thing. But sometimes people sit down and watch the TV show with me, which is my favorite thing to do in this world is have somebody watch a TV show with me. But joy now is more of a base reality, not something that is so super precious that I can't like hold on to for long periods of time.
Yeah. So, we talk a lot about joy, but there's value in having sadness in our lives as well. So let's do the same thing with sadness. What did sadness look like when you were a child? And then let's kind of compare that and contrast that with what sadness is like now.
Yeah, sadness when I was a kid was like it's almost like I almost personified it in a way of being this thing, this creature that I did not want to face. And so I would close my eyes to it and pretend it wasn't there because that was the best way to get through things was to just pretend like it wasn't there. Was I happy in response to that? No. But it's just, I was ignoring it so I could get through my day. Survival. And over time, it started to become this like ever present being in my life that I was constantly not looking at, but it was there. And it got to a point where I finally had to confront it because of everything in my life when I realized, okay, I'm still alive and I have people that care about me. I don't care about myself. Why is that? Like, what is going on? Why can't I deal with that? And it was like that person in the corner was like, hey, I'm still here. I'm still here. And you haven't addressed me. Like, let's talk. Let's have a conversation. And being able to actually feel my sadness about my life and the hard things that I've been through and just all of the things that I imagined for my life was going to be there and didn't end up happening, being able to confront that and actually recognize, like, wow, I am so sad, was able to get me to a place where I could actually feel happy again.
What a concept.
Yeah.
Wow. I have to just let that sink in for a minute.
Yeah.
Because I think it's so human to be so resistant to something that feels overpowered, right? Like it's going to be all consuming. And to basically surrender to that. And then what you end up receiving surprisingly is exactly what you were hoping to have.
Yeah.
But you thought you had to get there by avoiding that. And the reality was, in order to get to the happiness and the joy, you had to allow the sadness to do its work.
Yeah. And it's something that maybe sounds so simple to people who like have seen Inside Out and are familiar with that story. Like maybe it seems super simple, but for me, it was one of those things where because I had felt my emotions so strongly for my whole life, like anger and sadness, they came so easily that it got to a point where I thought this event, this new thing that has come into my life that is ruining my chance of happiness, it felt like, is so monumental. I can't even look at sadness. Like I can't even address it because it will destroy me. I won't make it. And especially when I was younger, mental health was like something that was more and more talked about, but at the same time, it was more talked about like, wow, all these people are committing suicide. And it became one of those things that I was terrified. I was like, if I actually confront this, is that how I'm going to feel? Like, I don't want to be alive anymore. And it just terrified me.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. You know, you kind of touch on this idea of the things that were so overwhelming and so scary, right? So let's talk a little bit about your health journey and these things. Yeah. I mean, how long have you been in Utah?
I've been in Utah since 2022.
Okay. So 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
And in those 4 years, you've had several things come up that felt life-threatening.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe not just felt it, but were. And navigating all of this ever since you were a teenager, different issues that come up. And like, how do you face the reality of what's going on with your health and the uncertainty, and yet still hold joy and future plans and navigating these types of things?
Yeah. It is very hard. It is something that, for me specifically, I can't speak for anybody else who's been through similar things that I have, or even just like near death experience kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, because it's been such a frequent circumstance in my life of being near this edge of death, I think for me, over time, it became clear that I have to either confront this head on and recognize, okay, I'm probably going to be dead in a year. I have to live this year for myself, for the people that care about me. I have to do everything I can to make sure the people around me are not completely devastated when this happens. And trying to take control of it in that way made it so hard for me to actually live my life because I just kept wanting to protect other people around me and to a degree protect myself. It just doesn't work that way. At least for me, it doesn't work in that way. So what I had to do was I had to be able to accept the fact that I want to make jokes about it. I want to be able to talk about it with people. And if I'm having a situation where I'm actually really scared or really feeling horrible, I want to be able to sit down and talk with somebody about it. And they need to be able to talk with me about it and not be scared about what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And for people that really cared about me, it seemed like, from my point of view at the time, I can't talk about this because I don't want to upset them. But then when I finally did, it was like, I'm so happy that you're talking to me about this because I think it's good for you to be able to talk about it, and you deserve to be scared. You deserve to be sad about this and not worry about everybody else. And I was like, oh yeah, that's right. They do love me. So they probably want me to talk about things that are bothering me.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how it became, is that whenever I had negative emotions about it, I would come and talk to you. I would talk to Mallory. I would talk to Lucas. I would talk to Naomi. Like, I would talk to everybody about it and actually confront my feelings about it. And that made it so much easier to bear it all, like to be able to find the joyful moments, because I'd be able to talk about it. And then afterwards, I'd watch a stupid movie with Mallory, or afterwards we would go on a walk outside or play a dumb video game. Like, it just made it so much easier to get to that moment of being able to do something fun where I'm not sitting with this thing simmering in the back of my mind. I've gotten it off my chest. So now I can actually embrace the joy in the moment and live in the moment.
So a few things that came to my mind as you were talking, like, I mean, we've got this huge elephant in the room that nobody knows how to talk about.
Yeah.
And then you give everybody permission to talk about it.
Yeah.
And you find in some spaces the safety to be able to do that.
Yeah.
I'm sure that there's been times that there wasn't the safety to talk about it.
Cancer is such this like red button word that people are so scared of talking about. Like, if you're watching a movie, you find out that one of the characters has cancer, it's immediately like, oh my gosh, they're going to die. Like, you just know watching the movie, but that's what's going to happen. And so that brings like the whole mood down. And people want to tiptoe around it. They want to like not look at it. And me, I'm sitting there joking about pulling out my cancer card so I can cut in front of somebody in line somewhere.
Hey, Dad did that all the time.
Yeah. And you know what? Like, also to that, like, a lot of how I figured out how to navigate it too was in being around Dad, who also was going through so many health issues for so long, that it's like, how do we exist in the world like this? And I think that for like talking with Dad about it, he changed a lot in his viewpoint of how he was dealing with it based off of his own mental health struggles that he was going through. But for watching him and how he was able to talk about it and joke about it. And I mean, even right after we found out about my lupus, Dad said it at the table as like a joke. And that was the first time that somebody had like joked about it with me. And it was serious. Like, it was something that I was like, I'm going to die in the next year or two. And Dad made a joke about it. And I was like, oh my gosh, that was amazing. So now it's not so like kid gloves.
Lupus or leukemia?
Lupus.
Yeah. So way back when you were a teenager, younger.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I remember he started calling Lucas.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I thought it was in very poor taste, but
Yeah.
you didn't. I mean, yeah. You know, and that's what mattered. It didn't matter what I was thinking about that. Like, you know, really, that, because it's what mattered to you.
Yeah. It's definitely something that is different with everybody that has an illness like that. For some people, it's like don't talk to me
Mhm.
about it. I don't want to dwell on it. It's
Right.
always about, my cancer. It's always about this, whatever. Whenever I talk to somebody,
Mhm.
let's talk about something else.
Mhm.
Some people don't want to talk about it. And then there's some people that like it's a part of your life. You can't, like, ignoring it feels silly,
Right.
at least for me.
Yeah.
It just was like, okay, let's like confront it. Like, we're talking about going on a hike. I'm not going to be able to go.
Mhm.
Let's confront that right now.
Mhm.
So, what are we going to do together when you guys get back?
Right.
Know?
One of the other thoughts I had before, like, you've just learned how to live in the present,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's a beautiful thing. Like, I just think everybody should learn how to do that more.
Yeah.
It helps because you have some situations in your life where for sure you don't know what's guaranteed, right?
Right.
But realistically, we all live in that situation. We just don't acknowledge it as clearly as you have to acknowledge it.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I could drive home tonight from here and get in a car accident and that's it.
Yeah.
You just never know.
You never know.
And so living in the present, so important.
Yeah. I think that with everything that we've been learning about grief over the last year and a half or so, a lot of what I have thought about too with that is how nobody lives in the moment because of confronting that fact.
Mm-hmm.
Because having to confront the fact that like anybody at any time could just be gone in just a moment means that you're confronting grief, which people don't like to talk about. They don't like to confront. They don't like to sit or dwell in that because it's kind of taboo to a degree, or it's sad, or too difficult for people to deal with. And so that's also another reason why it causes people to not live in the moment. They want to plan every second, not because they think that life will go according to that exact plan, but to not means that you're letting in the possibility that you won't get to be a part of the plan.
So going through all of this, you've had a lot of things in your life that have brought grief and trauma and all of this. I'd like to ask, like, what's been not helpful from other people and what has been helpful? Like, how have people held this space for you in good ways and what has been like, yep, that was not helpful. Let's not ever do that again.
Yeah. I think going through hard things, be it like grieving or going through a health crisis, a flare up, whatever, the number one question I get asked is, what can I do for you?
Mm-hmm.
And I never know the answer to that question.
So what would be a better question for somebody to ask?
I feel like a better question would be,
or maybe not even question your statement, or like, how can people show up better for you?
I think that the best way would be to like, this sounds like it's a diss, and it's not a diss, but I feel like one of the hardest things is that I don't know exactly what I need, mostly because I have the fear of asking for too much. I do know most of the time, okay, I have been laying in this bed for a day and a half. I have not eaten. I need something to eat. To think that when somebody asks me that, what can I do for you? For me to say, can you make me a full dinner? And can it be this specific thing? Because I don't know if I can like handle something else on my stomach. That feels like too much to ask for me. And so then it makes me feel the burden of having to ask for that. So maybe instead, alternatively, as a person who's in my life, recognizing she hasn't come out of her room for a long time, or I haven't heard from her for a couple days, it would probably help her a lot if I sent something to the house, or if I could make her some food and be like, hey, I was thinking about you. I don't know if you're hungry, but I did make this, or I did do this.
So some proactivity on the giver's part. And even if there's an uncertainty, I don't know if this is going to be what she wants or not, I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
Right.
Because some of it is kind of something that is like, if you make food and I'm not hungry in that exact moment, I will be hungry at some point. That's the way that life goes, is we all have to eat a couple times a day. And so like something like that, or even just anticipating like, wow, she's been in her room for so long. I wonder if she wants to spend some time together. So instead of being like, hey, what can I do for you? Being like, hey, can I spend some time with you? Can we watch a movie together? Can we go do this? Like I can help in any way I can. If there's like a physical thing that is obstructing you or keeping you from wanting to go do that thing, like we can figure it out. We can get you there. Like being able to do something like that. And that's something that Mallory has done quite a few times, where Mallory knows me so well that they're able to really see my needs and what I am needing in that moment, especially food. That is always something that Mallory knows I do not pay attention to. And so making a meal and being like, hey, I knew you were coming over, so I made this for you, is like, thank you.
Yeah.
And I cry.
Problem.
Mhm.
Not bad tears, though.
Not bad tears.
So, looking forward, like no guarantees, not for you, not for anybody, but
Mhm.
in a more like in your face kind of way for you, for sure.
Wow.
Tell me about some of the things that you allow yourself to dream about now
Mm.
that maybe before you resisted, you
Yeah.
didn't.
I would say that pretty consistently my whole life has been me wanting in the background, sometimes more clearly in front of me, to have a family and to be able to be on my own, like in my own place or whatever, having my own car, because there's been a lot of me having to rely on other people throughout my life, or having things taken away from me from people in my life. And that's kind of what I want to be able to do, is start building the blocks of my life to have the vision that I've always wanted of having a family and being a mother and all of that. And I think that one of the things I'm starting to allow myself is to actually make decisions for myself that will lead me in that direction. Because before I was like, you know what, I can't do that right now. I have no idea what's going to happen. And if this were to happen, then it would just fall apart, and then it would end up being somebody else's problem because I'm not going to be here. But I've kind of started to let go of that, of like, I'm going to find somebody and be with somebody, and they're going to know the situation, and they're going to love me anyway and accept it and go on this who knows journey with me.
Yeah.
Or they're not.
So thinking about when you used to think that, like, how did that make you feel? What emotion maybe would be connected to that?
To how it was
In the
before.
past? Yeah.
Mhm.
Like, can't even think about it, not even going to do that. Because why? What emotion would that stir up in you if you were to think about when you were thinking about it that way?
I think it was a lot of fear.
Oh.
A lot of fear. Because I think with the empathetic side of me, I was like, who would want to be with someone who has this expiration date on their forehead and have a baby with them or start a family with them? Because who wants to eventually be a single parent because they lose their loved one? Like, nobody wants to sign up for something like that. And I think when you get into a relationship with me, it's kind of something that you're signing up for. And so for a long time, I would think like, I can't allow somebody to do that to their life because what they loved me, you know? And that's what it was, is I was scared to allow somebody to love me and go on this journey, and for me to love them so much that I am constantly going to think about, gosh, what is going to happen to this person's life when I'm gone, to my family when I'm gone?
That makes a lot of sense. I just want to say that it makes a lot of sense that fear would be driving that. Do you still have fear? Think about your future and these dreams.
I do.
So what's different? What's different about the way fear showed up then, where it stopped you from dreaming, and the fear, the way it shows up now, that you can dream, even though the fear is still present?
The biggest difference is before, I didn't have that empathy, that care, that love for myself, to believe that I deserved it enough to eventually become this catalyst in somebody else's life. I didn't think that my life mattered more than anyone else's. And now I've gotten to this place where I'm like, I have been so scared to be selfish, but this isn't being selfish. This is giving myself a life that I want. This is looking out for myself and being able to live the dreams that I have had for myself my whole life. I deserve that. And it's so hard to say. Like, even now, it's hard to say out loud and to know that other people are going to hear this where I say I deserve that, and it's crazy. But I do, genuinely.
What does that feel? What do you do?
It's like that nervousness that people get if they have like stage fright.
Yeah.
That's what happens in my chest when I say something about loving myself or caring about myself, because I'm scared to say that because it feels wrong because of how I've grown up, because of how I've talked to myself my entire life. It feels wrong.
But I feel like you've gone from a place where you couldn't even say it out loud.
No,
At least now you can say it out.
I can say it out loud.
The more you say it out loud, the more authentic it will feel.
Yeah.
I just invite you to practice that.
Yeah. And it kind of became like a fake it till you make it kind of situation where I had to consistently be like, no, we love ourselves. We love ourselves. Mariah, we love ourselves. We love it.
And I think there's this part inside of you that still fights against that.
Oh yeah.
Right. And, we've talked about this before through IFS, the internal family systems, these parts that show up that they're trying to protect you from something. And what I've really learned about these parts is that typically they're not right. They have counterproductive ideas about how to protect you.
Yeah.
And as you work to get to know them and understand them, you can start to help give them different jobs within your family system. Right?
Yeah.
This has been an amazing conversation for me. I love conversations with you. I always learn. I always feel validated. Thank you for that. You always make me feel like I'm doing something good for you. And it's genuine. And I appreciate that. And learning how to receive that. So thank you.
Yeah.
I think, as we close out, I just want to offer you the same thing that I've offered all of our other guests, to have a final word and to share with our listeners whatever you might want to share. If there's somebody who is afraid to feel that joy, that is afraid to say, I matter, my happiness matters, and not in a selfish way.
Yeah.
Not in a I don't care about anybody else, but I can also care about myself.
Yeah.
What would you want them to know? What would you want to say?
I think that the biggest thing that I want people to be able to take away from this episode is to recognize that you can't let anyone or any voice in your head to keep you from being happy, to keep you from seeking joy in your life, or from processing things in the way that makes the most sense to you. Grief is something that is all over the place. And just because you go through grief doesn't mean that you're not allowed to feel joy. You're not allowed to feel happy in whatever timeline that you have for yourself or that is created for you. Are the owner of your own life and your own joy and your own path. And if you feel happy, don't let anybody take that away from you. Don't let anybody let you feel ashamed of being happy.
Amen. Thank you. I'll probably listen to this over and over to keep reminding myself of those truths.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, thank you for all that you do. And thanks for joining us again.
I think what's special about this episode is that it's like the end of all of the episodes with guests.
Yeah.
And then the only thing next is the one that you do.
So next episode, we'll kind of summarize all of that we've just gone through and maybe give you some of my personal takeaways from all of these beautiful discussions that we've had.
And they've been really amazing.
Amazing. I'm so excited also for season 2. We're getting put together a really great lineup of guests and super excited for where that's going.
Yeah. And doesn't this background look great?
I know. We finally are getting real here. You guys have been through so many iterations of
Yeah.
backgrounds, and you just stayed with us. Thank you. It means a lot to me.
But that's kind of like what life is.
It's just what life is.
Thank you so much for spending this time with me today on The Grief Between Us. If this episode and the things we talked about resonated with you, I would be so grateful if you shared the podcast with someone else who you think might enjoy listening to it. The more these conversations are shared, the more we can help create spaces where grief is understood rather than avoided. Until next time, take gentle care of your heart.